Today is Monday, October 21st, calling this to order at 6:32. As a reminder, open sessions are public to being recorded and your voice and image will be on the interweb forever and ever. All right, so we have approval of some minutes, Mr. Scott.
There was only 1 minute
Yep.
in the folder.
Mhm.
September 16th, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I move we approve the September 16th minutes.
All right, I will second that. Any questions? Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, general public comment? Nothing? All right. So we're a wee bit late, so Mr. Cummings, if you would like to come to the front table.
That'll be a short. So the majority of the month was spent up on your road doing the drainage and everything. We just finished that today. We also started getting on the roadside mowing. To try and get a jump on that. Whenever we had a chance, we had a free day, we had 2 guys go out. The fall cleanups have started. They're coming down pretty quick now, ever since this weekend. So hopefully, we'll be able to keep up with them. The weatherization has been completed at the highway garage, finally. Not super impressed with the way it came out, quality control is on the back burner nowadays.
Yes, but the big thing is that will your electric bills be a wee bit less this coming winter than they have been in the past?
It'll be interesting, or even to see when the wind blows across from the backyard, to see if it takes the chatter away, to see if it was going up in the hood.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens. We finally got the Brown building cleaned out, so we're ready for demolition. The only thing we have left is the Buffalo Springfield, which a couple of the guys thought that was going with it, and it's like, no, we'll get it out. And also the 2 that were saved from the basketball project. Julie was trying to work with the school to see if maybe they wanted them to replace the ones out back. I don't know where she is on that.
Okay.
So that's all that's in there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the trees I talked about last month, about the ones that we removed on West Street in the vicinity of the highway garage. I haven't heard anything updates from the bridge project. Other than I don't even know if the engineers had submitted it back, if they did their comments and then sent it back to MassDOT.
I did not hear. I believe they had 30 days to do their review.
Yeah.
We can follow up.
Yeah, so hopefully we're here sometime soon for that.
Has Clinton been using the truck at all for the trees?
No, they don't trust guys with saws on the ground, so they won't put them in the bucket. But they do take it occasionally to put up banners, take down flags, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Which I don't know how they do it, because it's basically street height. And, you're going up 65 feet to take a flag down that's 15 feet off the ground. It's their right to use it.
That is correct. They pay half the bill. That is
Yeah.
correct.
And that actually got its annual inspection in July. All the dielectric and it's ready for tree season.
And all your guys are all up to speed on any training that might be coming up or?
Yep, we're actually, we're gonna be hosting a class through Bay State Roads, for spreader calibration. Because the majority of the guys haven't done it before, and we've shown them how to do it. But now it's bringing the instructor in, and it's like, if you hear from them, maybe they'll understand it more and actually go with the settings the trucks are meant for. Instead of like, oh, I think I could use more here. Like, you don't need more. More is not better. So that'll be in December. We're actually trying to hold as many as we can, because it gives you 2 free slots into the class. And the fees went up. It used to be $75 a person, it's now $100. So that kind of hurts.
Okay. Anything for,
I'm good.
I have nothing.
That's it?
See?
No. After last time you were here, no. We're done. We're done.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right, I was gonna offer you a jackhammer, but. It's too late now.
Ah. No, I'm good. Thank you for everything that you do. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. That's
You
what
guys
we're
are
here.
appreciated. All right. Well, since we have time before the superintendent shows up, do we want to skip down and work through some of our other
Yep.
appointments? All right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. So, oh, wait a minute, Fred, wait, don't go. With your permission, there is an item farther down in the agenda about the Berlin Lions wanting to light the trees. Are
Yes.
they town trees or church
I
trees?
still hadn't had a chance to actually measure.
Okay,
I did talk with Dave Mollica.
Yeah.
I gave him my blessing, should there be a town tree.
okay,
Because that's how they started. When Berlin, Christmas in Berlin started, those were the trees they illuminated.
okay,
Which is why we think, at the base of the trees, that's where all the plugs were. So when the Lions started doing the individual Christmas style tree, there were cords running everywhere. So I gave him my blessing. I wasn't opposed to it if they
okay.
got the approval from everyone else.
All right. Scott, do you have any issue with those trees being lit?
No, at some point it's gonna be, we can't do nice things because there'll be some other slippery slope somewhere, but I'll wait till we cross that bridge to
Okay.
oppose Christmas tree lighting.
Yeah, I did ask Dave to get permission from the church, even if it comes back and says that they're town trees.
Yeah.
It's just the right thing to do to reach out to the church people and say,
I recommended him to do that as well,
okay,
just in case, but I will still get that measurement for you,
okay, cool,
just so we know for sure.
awesome. All right, honest, that's it. Run. All right,
A motion on that?
yes, please.
So moved.
And seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
You voted to put lights on the trees. Okay, all right. So we have an appointment of multiple election workers. Dee, do we have to say them by name?
Or you can just say as listed in the warrant, I meant in the agenda if you choose.
All right,
So I would move that we appoint the election. Are we gonna do this? Can we do it all as one motion or do I have to do it separate?
can we do it as one or separate?
On C, you can do it all.
No,
as
no,
one.
C, D, E,
C, D, E, and F,
or do you want
which are
separate
all
motions?
election workers.
Well, I think you should do it separate because.
Sure.
in the
Okay.
wording.
All right,
I move that we appoint the election workers as listed in the agenda, as an 8 to 10 people or so listed there who I'm really grateful are gonna help out electioneering.
absolutely. I will second that. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor? Aye. All right, down to the appointment of the election clerk.
I move that we appoint Jane Sawyer as election clerk.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one.
I move we appoint Elizabeth Soar as assistant election warden.
Second. All those in favor? Next.
Seems out of order. I move that we appoint Tim Wysocki as the election warden.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't take the 10 minutes we had.
No, that's all right. We have other stuff that we can.
I'm gratefully I appreciate all the people who are volunteering on the
Oh,
elections.
yep.
Especially when you hear stories around the country about how hard it is to get people to do it
Mhm.
and it is a good group of people.
Yes, it is. All right, so next up, we have a notice of intent to appoint several rec counselors. Ooh, left the teeth at home this morning. Okay. Is there a motion?
Mood, I thought these were for summer programming though. Aren't we a little late for summer
They
programming?
changed, so the job description has morphed from summer programming to part-time recreation counselors, and personnel has signed off on this so that they can do events throughout the year that recreation holds, including after-school programs that the schools have requested
And the
for
fund,
park days.
and that funding for this is coming from fees for these said programs.
Correct. And we are amending the revolving fund for recreation at town meeting in December, retroactive to July 1 to allow for wages in there, as we realize wages is not in there, so. That will allow us to do this.
I'll move to that we support the intent to appoint the 3 part-time rec counselors listed. 4 part-time rec counselors listed.
I will second that. Before we vote, Dee, are there any things that these folks need to do to complete the process, or are they good to go?
No, there's a couple of them that haven't filled out new hire paperwork yet, but have indicated that they are working on that and will bring it in.
Okay, all right. With that, all those in favor to appoint?
Aye.
Excellent. Kristen, we still have 3 minutes, so you want a speedy quick through your
was
TA
gonna say.
report? Because I have a feeling the other ones are gonna be a little bit longer.
Absolutely. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so we are into budget season. The FinCom had their third budget meeting. They will meet again next week and finalize the budget package. As a reminder, FinCom meetings are held 7:30 on Wednesday evenings, and residents can attend in person or participate remotely via Zoom and now YouTube Live. The FinCom has also voted to do that as well. The link is located on mytowngovernment.org/01503. Department head evaluations are underway and capital request forms are due October 31st. We'll be talking about town meeting on December 9th coming up. I also met with interim superintendent Al Ganem and interim finance director Dan Didi and participated in a call with Desi regarding some school budget matters. We'll be speaking about that in a little while as well. We have 2 requests for responses out right now, which really are quotes because they're under $50,000. They don't require a full bid. The first is for the demolition of the barn, as Fred was mentioning, on South Commons, and the second is for painting and plastering on the interior of the 1870 Town Hall. Both of those quotes are due October 23rd. I actually to date have over 20 companies that have requested the painting quote now, and over 30 companies that have requested the Brown Barn demolition RFR. So pretty impressive response from folks. We'll see how many quotes we actually get. Kind of a larger than normal Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch update. On the administration side, Marlboro is interested in joining the district. And the admin board did express interest last week in exploring this opportunity. So the next step will be for Marlboro to submit a letter of intent to the district. The ops board met and had, interest in exploring the longevity and viability and sustainability of the district, particularly in a financial sense, is dependent upon us eventually taking on some additional communities. And I think the geographic nature as well as the types of calls are more similar than some of the other communities that have approached the district. So there is a willingness to have that conversation there. I'm pleased to report that the admin board also voted unanimously to renew Director Ann Camaro's contract for an additional 3 years. Can't say anything but that she has done an exceptional job running the district. It is now an industry leader and a model for other districts, and State 911 often uses them as a reference and a resource. And preliminary district estimates are in for FY26. We're looking at about a 9% increase, which equates to approximately $13,000 a year per community, for a total of $213,000 estimated for dispatch for FY26. As I mentioned, taking on those additional communities will help lower the assessments of the member communities. Still working with American Tower to finalize the lease. I thought that government had the most bureaucratic processes I've ever seen, but this takes the cake. I also had the opportunity to attend the MARPA conference, which is the Mass Association of Regional Planning Commissions, on October 8th, where the Lieutenant Governor, as well as some of Governor Healy's cabinet members, discussed legislative updates, including the new accessory dwelling unit law and some federal funding opportunities that they are that they're creating a state fund for matching funds for communities that don't have them, which I thought was a really neat upcoming opportunity. We are working, if I haven't mentioned this before, on updating our hazard mitigation plan, which is a required update every 5 years. CMRPC is doing that for us with a $30,000 grant that we received to do so. I also held a Complete Streets Grant stakeholders meeting at the 1870 Town Hall. We asked immediately adjacent property owners to come and provide input on the redesign of the town center. And the feedback is being provided to our engineering firm, who is helping to design, or who is designing the project rather. Once they have conceptual designs based on some of this input, a townwide meeting will be held to solicit further feedback. But we really wanted to kind of have a small group of immediate stakeholders first who really know the area and are immediately impacted by what's going on down there. And then last but not least, we now have a draft emergency safety plan for voting. So that could be anything from, the building starts flooding to something larger on the emergency scale. This is a state requirement for a contingency plan to be put in place for how you move ballots, how you deal with people that are in the middle of voting, et cetera, in case there's an emergency. That's what I have for you.
Awesome.
It's a little more than 3 minutes, sorry.
That's
No,
fine.
I have questions, but I'll hold them until after we do our hearings.
Okay. Have you heard? Do you expect him to be here?
I do.
All right.
Let me just check.
Well,
We do call.
can we discuss vote to execute the Central Mass Law Enforcement Council mutual aid agreement? I mean, that seems like a quick hit.
So this is a request from the police department to renew our mutual aid agreement for Semlec, which you just pronounced out. And this is a request from Chief Shartner to move forward with executing this agreement with our regional partners to provide this service.
And
And-
is,
Go ahead.
is there much of a change from the previous
No.
agreement, right?
Okay, that was gonna be my question. What's changed?
Sorry.
He said
I did-
essentially nothing.
I know you picked it. Well, you're closer. You get to ask. Okay.
And it looks like it's signed by you as opposed to select board, so are we supposed to authorize you to sign?
If you could authorize me to sign, that would be great.
I vote
That'd be
to,
appropriate.
I move to approve the regional, oh my goodness.
And yes, the execute.
Mutual aid, the
There you go.
mutual aid, a regional agreement, and authorize Kristen to sign it.
I will second on both. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Well, while we're waiting, do you wanna, do you have enough for a quorum?
Yeah, we have a quorum, we can now call.
All right.
over.
Okay.
So. Call to order Berlin Finance Committee.
At 6:48.
Those details.
You know, why? Stop looking at me like that. All right.
My watch, it says 6:50, but maybe my watch is wrong.
Well,
I've
I'm,
got 6:49, so we have three
6:49.
different.
all right, so we have anywhere prior.
Not long enough, 6:50 will be right.
That's right,
so.
anywhere prior to 7 o'clock. I mean, obviously, we can't start till he's here. How about coffee talk? That's a quick one.
So we
No,
talked
so
about
quick
holding a coffee talk on November 14th at 6:30 PM. The point would be to discuss the special town meeting on December 9th. In fact, I recommend that pretty much be the
only
sole
one.
topic. Because I think there's enough to discuss. As you'll see, the warrant has 15, possibly 16 articles to it. And what I like to do, if the board is amenable to this, is just to walk folks through the warrant. So it's available online as well as on YouTube. And, you know, can be watched later on as well.
Okay. All right, so here, 6:30. Oh, no, come on down to the front before you get too comfy.
Yeah.
We don't want to make you move twice.
So 6:30 here,
6:30 here.
and
Yep.
then Dee will be sending out information on the web.
Yep.
And then I'll help push it around. And
Perfect.
we'll
Right on
post
the
it
computer,
at
huh?
library, general store. 19
Yeah.
Pata, 19 Pata. All right. Well, we have a special guest here
Yes, yes.
tonight,
Yeah.
special guest. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. A few ground rules before we start. So given that you're here and still figuring everything out, this is an informational session. I will not be entertaining questions from the audience there, or if anybody pops in up there. Given that this will also not be a ready, aim, fire at the current administration as they still continue to find their way through this. I see this as a wonderful first step, and truly thank you for being here and repairing any damage that was done last May and June with the process. I think as elected and appointed and hired town officers, that we owe it to the town to do better. That is a promise that we must make tonight, and it is a promise that we must keep going through this process. As I mentioned, I'd like to limit questions. I'm sure this is not the last time that you're going to be here and that we're going to work together. So, you know, updates on the meeting that you had, thoughts, processes, where you're going. The past is the past. We're not going backwards. We can't afford to go backwards. We can only go positively front. So any thoughts of finger wagging, blaming, done, move on. We're not going there. So do you have any comments before I hand over the floor?
Sure. I just wanted to thank our interim finance director, Dan Didi, and interim superintendent Al Ganem. They've reached out to me. We've had a chance to have a discussion, get to know each other a little bit. Dan and I actually know each other in a past life, so it's always fun to reconnect back from those Leicester days. And I have full confidence in the administration and what I've seen so far, and I'm very impressed. These are true seasoned professionals here. We've had a wonderful dialogue so far, and I'm really looking forward to continuing these dialogues throughout the budget process. I really welcome this open and honest communication that we've had, and I'm very, very thankful to have you both here this evening. So I just wanted to say welcome and thank you for giving us a update on where we're at with everything going on FY25 and moving into FY26.
Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.
So obviously Dan Deedy and myself, Al Ganem, we're both interims, but we are fully invested in the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District. And I appreciate, Margaret, what you said. We're moving forward, right? What are our steps that we learned from the past? Our PEG, sorry, it's our PEG. But
She's only Margaret when she's in trouble.
sorry, there you go. She could be. So anyways, we're moving forward and looking in what direction we're gonna go. Working with the school committee in both towns of Boylston and Berlin, and where we move forward so that we can present a needed budget so that we can be able to educate our children, right, of both communities. And a little bit of the ground rules, Peg, and I appreciate what you said. And one of the things that we've talked about with Kristen and my sort of ground rules is as well too, is my communications are always going through Kristen, the town administrator. I think in the past, there's been a lot of conversations and I think that doesn't do anyone good. And all my communications will be through Kristen. Not that I don't appreciate Peg. Meeting my wife will also appreciate Peg making sure I know where I'm at all times on Friday at Tohoto during the senior breakfast. So, but I really will go all through communications through Kristen. And this way, then everyone's hearing the same information at the same time. And this will help with being that transparency that I think everyone's looking for in those clear communications as well too. But we look forward to working with both towns this year and really developing a budget and saying so to make sure we can provide what we need to for all of our students as well too. So we move forward.
And if I may echo that for just a moment, I really just want to enforce that too, that we do communications. This is not a decision-making process. I'm asking anyone to vest in me. I just really want to be able to go administration to administration and share that information with you all. So I'm going to be a bit tight on that one. And I do appreciate your support in that regard.
And Kristen, I just one final thing with regards to we got work to do. We got a lot of work to do. And that's our job. That's what they hired me to do as a school committee, to make sure that we do that work in this period of time. And if I can streamline it and working smarter, and as well, that's the most important thing. And I think communication is a big piece of that. And I always hear people always saying we got to get better at communication. And I think that goes for a lot of people. And so if my communication is always through the town administrator, just like through my school committee chair as well too, then I need to disseminate the information that way. And that just makes us working smarter and not necessarily harder at all times. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who's going to give us a little bit of, and I know you heard a lot. He did a great job presenting at the school committee meeting, and I think that helped prompt this meeting as well too. So I think we'll just go forward. And again, here's where we're at, and here's what we're going to do to move forward. I think that's the most important thing we can do.
So good evening. First of all, I'm going to say Madam Chair. That's
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but hey,
That's
it absolutely works.
that's my training.
know. I
and,
appreciate it.
Robert's rules. So Madam Chair, members of committees, thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. And as the superintendent said, this is a part of the roadshow, for lack of a better term, of us bringing forward the work that we've done, that we plan to do. And if I may, Madam Chair, to take a page out of your book, we're moving forward. I had a teacher a gazillion years ago, won't say when, who often said onward and upward. And I believe that. The other thing too, and I have said this to school committee twice. So if you've watched those school committee meetings, you've heard this twice, but you're going to hear it again. I sincerely believe, I do, that though I am the interim guy and there is a permanent school business official starting fairly soon, that this is an opportunity, for the district to do a reset. And by that I mean is maybe to take okay practices, or maybe kind of good practices, but to develop and to implement best practices. I sincerely believe that. And just as an example, I think this is page 2 of my little speech here, but we'll jump ahead back to page 1 in a second. You know, best practice. I mentioned to the principals and directors, the administrators at our leadership team meeting a couple of weeks ago. I said, it's that time of year again to do what I call chasing the dogs purchase orders. That they looked at me like I had 10 heads. Well, maybe I have 20 heads. Just ask my wife, she'll tell you that. And what is chasing the dogs purchase orders? That's a periodic review of our open purchase orders to look at where we're at and where we need to be. Do we need to perhaps adjust the encumbrance up? Do we need to adjust the encumbrance down? Do we keep it the same? And so that's one example. A second example is in the brief time that I've been here, and I started on Tuesday, September 3rd, right after Labor Day, is that I've sat down with a couple administrators and I've walked them through, you know, their various fund balances from a previous year. And when I was sharing the numbers with them, they looked at me like I had 30 heads. That's probably the analogy they're going to use tonight. But I said, so you've not seen this, and they hadn't. But I believe that in all sincerity, okay, we're moving forward. And for those administrators, for example, the SPED director who oversees the preschool account and the circuit breaker, just as examples, to share with her what her numbers were, unofficial, keyword is unofficial numbers, at the end of FY24. So when I say to you, this is an opportunity, and I believe that, I do, to do a reset, to revitalize, to reborn, is that right? Is that such a word, reborn the district? I do. There is a great team who's coming in. Aaron Osborne will be the permanent school business official. He'll be here actually about a week, which is great news. Secondly, we recently hired a permanent payroll director. She's been helping us out. She's been helping us out both at nights and on weekends as well. So that's great. Number 3, we're looking to backfill an accounts payable, accounts receivable clerk, and we're still working on that. But I have every confidence that we'll get the right person in there. Since I've been here on September 3rd, it has not been boring. We've been busy. We've been busy trying to wrap up business from last year. One of the problems is that when people are coming and going, you tend to lose the history, or you don't have the opportunity to talk to those folks. And those challenges from the end of last year and into this year as well. You know, I don't want to get into, I am more than happy to get into all the hiccups. But I think that you're aware of hiccups. Yes, there were bills that weren't paid. They have been paid. They have been paid, or they're being paid. And you know, one of the problems that we fixed about 3 weeks ago was that there were emails that were being sent that for one of our AP folks who's no longer here. And now those emails are coming to me. I have about 800 emails in my email account, but somehow I'm plugging through them. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow I'm plugging through them. But we're making progress. We're making incremental progress, and I think what you need to hear from us this evening is that this is going to take a little bit of time. And as part of that process and that time is, again, to implement those best practices here in the district. I've been a school business official for almost 20 plus years. I retired a couple years ago. And the first year was kind of quiet, and then I was helping someone else last year, and here I am this year. I have a tremendous respect in regard for the district. I do. You know, the wheels falling off the bus a little bit. Okay, but we're going to put it back on. We're going to put it back on. Again, as I started back on the third, I came across hiccups. One of the things I was looking at is I wanted to look at our E&D submission from about a year ago. And as I explained to school committee, there was a hiccup there, and that's my term, on the balance sheet checklist. And I apologize. It was more going to be like a free-flowing conversation. I didn't want to bring in a PowerPoint and do all that. So free-flowing conversation. On the balance sheet checklist, which is like page 1, there is an error for the FY24 budget. It had 25 million reported. I did, as I have said to the superintendent and to the committee, I self-reported. What does that mean? I took it upon myself to contact our representative at the Department of Revenue and make them aware that the number for FY24 is not correct. Now, did that error have any impact on the certification for our E&D from FY23? No, it didn't. However, when we submit our certification in late December, it's due to, November. It's due November 30, December 1st, thereabouts. And if our rep is to look at what was submitted last year at that time, she's going to say, well, wait a minute, Dan, you had this number here, and now you've got this number here. That's correct. That's why I self-reported to the Department of Revenue, and she was fine. She said, thank you for that, and we've moved on. And I did tell her, I gave her a quick snapshot in terms of what's happening. I said, just ask for your patience as we work through some of these challenges here. The FY25 general fund budget, as we all know, there have been a number of several different numbers bandied about, if you will. And when I did meet with the school committee, we met with the school committee a couple of weeks ago, I felt it was important then to put, for lack of a term, my cards on the table and say to the committee, okay, this is what I'm showing. And I did that night. And again, you probably heard or saw, and which is why we're here this evening. There are different numbers that are being presented. And again, in our accounting software, I have one number. And I remember years and years ago, probably when I was kind of a rookie school business official, when I was probably 20 pounds lighter and there wasn't any gray in the side. One of the auditors that I was working with at the time said to me, Dan, the number in Munis, that's what we were using. And Munis is, again, a financial accounting package that a lot of municipalities use. That's your budget, regardless, that's your budget. And somehow her words rang in my head back in September, and it kind of rings in my head every day when I look at that number and I say, well, that's really not what the committee voted. And if you look at what the committee voted back on June 20, or the letter that was sent to Kristen back on June 24th, at approximately $23,423,320.63. There's a variance there between what's in our software and that number of almost $1.4 million. However, what I explained to the committee is that I believe that one of the issues with that number is that we have offsets. We have other funds, be they grants or revolving funds. And I think that, and none of us were here. The superintendent wasn't here. I was on a beach someplace or on a golf course someplace. And I can't put my fingers on the information that was used to enter that. So I'm trying to backtrack back into the number. But I believe that part of the problem is that the offsets, the grants, and the revolving funds were perhaps commingled into the general fund. So I got to back them out and sort that out, figure that out. When I noticed these issues, when I found these issues in the general fund, I did a second self-reporting, if you will, and I contacted DESID. And I contacted the folks who oversee regional school districts, and I made them aware. But they were aware already. I didn't beat them to the punch. The town had beat me to the punch. Respectfully stated. And I made them aware that we have a variance here. So that began a series of conversations with DESI to sort this matter out. And their charge to me is now to reconcile the current FY 25 budget to in essence here on October 21st, but to back into the 25 budget on the revenue side. And that on the revenues, it is my intention, again, to use the final state number, the cherry sheet numbers, as well as the assessments that were approved at town meeting. And I've begun, say it 10 times fast, Dan, I've begun that work. And I hope to have that work completed in the next week or so, and then to go back into the general fund and then make those adjustments accordingly. Again, this is for me to present to the committee probably in a couple of weeks, and then it would be then incumbent upon the committee then to in essence revote the 25 budget. And that was a directive that I received from Michelle Griffin and Jay Sullivan at the DESI. And you know, they oversee regional districts in terms of financials and reporting purposes. So I have to heed their direction pretty seriously, but being respectful and mindful of what was approved by the respective towns last May and last June. As I said to the school committee a couple of weeks ago, that assuming we have to make adjustments, and we talked about this with DESI, we can reallocate cost out of the general fund into several revolving funds. One, for example, would be school choice. The unofficial balance, and the key word is unofficial because we haven't been audited yet. I actually spent about 45 minutes on the phone today with our auditor, just kind of playing catch-up hockey with the auditor. So he's up to speed now. But we do have 2.8 million thereabouts in school choice. We have a carry forward in our circuit breaker account of approximately 573,000 in change. And if we're in a situation where that won't be enough, there are several other revolving funds. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised at looking at some of the fund balances. For example, our preschool revolving had a significant fund balance in there. And again, we're moving forward. We're moving forward. We're heading down the train tracks. All the wheels are on the tracks, and we're gonna right the ship. Last year, I was working in another regional district, an interim gig, if you will, and oftentimes I would say to my staff in the business office, I'd say, consider this a teaching moment. And I think I said that a lot last year. These are teaching moments. So with that theme, I think that there'll be some teaching moments as we look forward to amend, revise, correct the FY 25 general fund budget and look at some of those balances in the revolving funds and perhaps reallocate cost to those revolving funds. Because this is my third regional district, and I'm very, very sensitive. I get it. I do. I'm very, very sensitive to your needs and your financial resources. You know, I still haven't found that money tree out there in the back. You know, if you find it, please send me a postcard. And if I find it, well, I'll send you a postcard from Tahiti. Little levity, but we have hard work ahead of us. We've done difficult work to date. I guess if we, at the end of the day, can't laugh about something, one of us is going to jump out the window. But I say that with utmost respect.
If I could
But-
jump in for a second, I know Dan's throwing numbers down and he's gonna continue, give you some information as well too. I think the message that we want to make sure that you're hearing is there was nothing illegal or immoral done, right? So what we're finding is human error was made here, right? And one of the things that we're finding right now is there weren't processes and procedures in place, right? And so that's the thing that we're working on. Appreciate Dan is coming close to his hours of being an interim, right? So some days he's not even here every single day. Our payroll person is not here every single day as well too. Starting next week, Aaron Osborne, our Director of Finance, will be on board full-time starting Monday. Our payroll person will be on board Monday. So besides all this work that Dan and I are doing, we're really trying to run a school district at the same exact time, right? And put all those other pieces in place. This is just one pillar of running a school, which is a very important one, but still there's a lot of other things going. So I just want to make sure we're clear that everything that we're seeing right now, it's looking like human error and not having possibly the right people in the right positions doing the right job. And so they were working at it, but not doing it the correct way. And so this is what we're trying to fix right now. But please know, we're hearing those stories as well too, about misappropriation, this and this and that. It looks like it's coming down to just human error and people not having the right people in the right positions as well too. So we're trying to fix that, but it does take time.
Going back to the conversation I had with our auditor this afternoon, he asked that question to me point blank. And I said to him without equivocation, absolutely not. To use the superintendent's terminology, there is human error. And perhaps there weren't a lot of teaching moments in the past. And as I shared with two of my staff last year, another district, is that let's call this a teaching moment. But we're moving forward. Last week, for example, one of the challenges that I came across is that we participate in school-based Medicaid claims. The deadline was September 1st. I started September 3rd. However, I do have 1 or 2 friends out there, and I did speak to my representative from my previous regional district, and I said, hey, if my fading memory serves me correctly, we should have sent to you about 2 weeks ago our certified fourth quarter claim from FY24. Speed up the story. We got it done. They cut me some slack, and we got it done last week, and we submitted it to Mass Health, and we'll be expecting a check the next several weeks, and we move on. But one of the things that I said to my colleague at UMass, and I've said to the committee as well, is that I believe that this is another opportunity. Again, I'm coming back to that terminology, opportunity, for the district. And I've been in a number of districts where we participate in school-based Medicaid claims, and we've had receipts in the hundreds of thousands. In my previous district, I think we were 300,000 and change. I think there's an opportunity. I think there's potential. Now, that's going to require rolling up the sleeves and some hard work, but this is me, but I think that there's a resource there. And if there is, that helps us, because that should hope, theoretically, that would be less that we would be, putting back on the towns. Is that going to happen overnight? No, it's not. It's not. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some time for buy-in from staff who maybe aren't involved with that now. But again, I just, maybe I'm being redundant, but I'm redundant for a reason, because it's going to take time. But this is an opportunity for a complete reset.
And the thing I guess I can't stress enough is Dan and I and Aaron, this is not our first rodeo to use that expression. We've been doing this a long time. I have over 30 years in education, regional school as well too, just experience. And Aaron coming on board has the experience. School committee hired me to do the job. And so that's the job we're going to do. And I've said this, and I'm not being disrespectful to anyone, I look forward to working with everyone on the teams, but I need you a little bit to stay out of our way so we can get this work done, because there's work to be done. And we need to catch up and get this work done. So just know that we're putting some good people in place. Dan has done an incredible job as interim. Aaron's going to do a great job. We're still filling those spots in there. Patty, who's our payroll person, hiring really strong people that are excited to be working in this district and are gonna do a good job with us. So we're putting the people in place, you know, and we're gonna be working with you guys, and we're really coming up with a plan of what we're gonna do to make sure that this time around, the budget is a lot more clearer for not only the people sitting in this room right here, but for the people who are paying it as well too, right? The people that live in the town of Berlin and the people that live in the town of Boylston. And just a little thing, we already started that work. I know that Aaron, who officially doesn't start till Monday, is already working on. I've been on a few of those emails. He's already getting the capital improvement work done, because I know that's a timeline that you guys want sooner than later. So we're already getting that in place. He's meeting with principals as well too. So all of this is happening. If you can appreciate it at the same time, we're running a school district as well too, and making sure the kids are getting that education as well too. So how are we doing for you?
We are wrapping up.
Yep.
If I may, Madam Chair, members of the committee, to draw an analogy, that was probably a 20,000-foot overview in terms of some of the challenges that we've been about and some of the work that I've done that we've done. I guess some takeaways from this brief discussion, if you will. Number one is there were hiccups. I'm fixing them as quickly as I can. There isn't a day that happens where maybe I find something else and I jump on as quickly as I can. Secondly, I do believe that, as the superintendent said, that there is a team coming in, a skilled team, and that they get it, and that they want to succeed for you, for Boylston, but most importantly, for our students and for our faculty and staff. And I just need to say without equivocation, that there is no theft or anything like that. I've heard that, and I've been in the trenches, Madam Chair, members of the committees. I've been in the trenches since like 8:30 Tuesday, September 3rd. Whatever it's worth, I've hit my mark. I said, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving the battle line. I'm not leaving. So thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for your time.
And just one last thing, a piece that we're putting in place that you're gonna start seeing more, and we've talked to school committee about this, is we're doing gonna have a lot of cross training, right? It seems like in the past that people were in isolation in their jobs. A sign of a true leader, and I said this when I was interviewed, I should be working myself out of a job, right? So everybody should be able to know their job, and the district should be able to run because people know their jobs and also are cross-trained. And so that's one of the things we're starting to develop as well too, so that we have, and even myself sitting with principals and directors, like, what's your job description? What are your goals? And what exactly do you do, right? And everyone's sort of listening, because there are some things that I'm still learning myself. Little over 2 months for myself, little less than that for Dan. You know, even putting today a table of organization together. We never had a flow chart in terms of table organization. I have it, and I could share it with you tonight, but respectfully, I want to share it with my district first and my school committee second, and then I'll share it with you guys, so you know, like, who's responsible for what. But also you'll see who's responsible for what and how we're cross-training each other, so we all can make this district run as well too. So it doesn't happen like what happened to myself and the Dan. We come on board and say, okay, what's going on here? Who else can help us run this? So that's the piece that we're seeing is missing, and hopefully we're going to put that in play for the next superintendent that comes on board as well too. With that, we respectfully submit that to you. And I know we spoke a lot, but that's really the history of what we've experienced in the last couple of months. And again, we're done that past of who did this and why didn't they do this. We're just moving forward, the work that's got to be done, because time is ticking away, right? We're already reaching into November. And so we want to make sure that we get the stuff done. We haven't finished yet last year's budget completely, when we're already meeting with people for next year's budget as well. So just know that as well.
What do you need from us in order to make this a successful budget season? I mean, I'm sure we all could come up with at least 10 ideas that we could filter through Kristen
Yeah,
to.
thank Appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely, to go to you, just to set expectations, because I want to eliminate oh, I didn't know.
Yep.
Oh, we can't get that. No, so what are you looking from joint us?
Yep.
to get to you?
So right now, I am working with my principals. We had one of our first meetings today with Dan and Aaron on board. They'll be coming on and working about what they need, right? They're the boots on the ground, right? What do we need to make sure that we're having high quality schools, right?
Mhm.
And so that's the work that they're doing for us. They're gonna share that with us. And then we'll be sharing that with school committee, which will then in turn come to the towns and sharing that as well too. But we're really looking to see, even with our conversation with principals today and department heads, like what our MCAS scores look like and where we need to go. And let's be honest, right? It costs money sometimes, so you have to put money invested into some of these things to make sure we have what we need for our children as well too. They're our future, and that's what we're working on right now. So we started that process now. So for me to give you an answer right now, this is what I need. I couldn't at this point because there's still that information gathering that we still have to do yet.
Any questions from
I have
FinCom?
two questions. One's real simple. Are you gonna give the same presentation to the Boylston Select Board and Finance Committee?
Yep, we're doing it. We gave it to school committee. We had the process of planning of doing all this, right? And then we reached out with our school committee members and figure out what's the best way to sort of get this out. We reached out to Department of Education like Dan did to self-report, but we found out that we're just a little bit behind you guys, right? Our conversation was already happened before you guys reached out, so that's why you were first on the docket. So in answer to your question, yes, we will be doing the Boston as well too.
Okay, and the other question is, will you provide another update in certain time frame or that stuff?
Sure.
I don't know if you have a general idea when you
Yep.
might think that would be reasonable.
Everything's gonna go through first the school committee, and then the school committee will share it, and we will share it with Kristen as well too. And then if Kristen wants us to present it to some committee like this, we'd be more than glad to as well too. We will continue to keep you updated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Scott, I got it. Madam Chairperson. Peg. It's good to see you, Dan and Al again.
You as well.
And I appreciate all the hard work, especially what you just said there at the end, Dan, about hanging in there with the fight. I appreciate that. I got a question that's just a simple factual thing, because I come from a place where people don't talk as fast as they do in Massachusetts. And Dan, on the fiscal 24 balance sheet error, where is it that it's what document needs to be prepared? What financial document were we talking about? I
So-
just missed the factual details. Yeah, if you could
So
repeat that a little bit, the
so-
high level.
So through the chair, on the balance sheet checklist, which
Yeah.
is the first document that is submitted. And if you have access to that, or better yet, through the chair, I will send that document to the committees. So it just says FY 24 budget, and the figure there was $25 million.
So Dan, is that rolled up into something else that then is given to, you said in December, when they look at last year's, it isn't gonna, numbers aren't gonna match.
So through the chair, when the district submits its FY 24 E&D certification.
that's what I was looking for.
E&D certification,
Okay,
and they look at our budget for 24, our general fund budget for 24 is not 25 million. So what I was trying to be proactive
Mhm.
and just make our DOI rep aware that was a hiccup. That number did not impact the certification from FY 23 for our E&D.
okay.
That's a huge piece what he just said, though. Making sure you understand that piece.
It did not affect the certification,
Correct, through the chair,
but
correct,
the fiscal 23 certification.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
So in answer to the question that Peg asked earlier, I think one of the things I had the privilege of watching that June meeting that took place, like that's something that we won't do. right?
That's
So
good.
We won't do that. We'll be working closely with school committee, we'll be working closely with you, so that when we're presenting to the towns, that's our one time, right? Although there might be multiple times that we're sharing with the town, the work that we're doing and the money that we're using on behalf of them for our schools. We're not gonna come into an event like that everybody should know what we're coming into when we're coming into that as well too. And decision won't be made at the last second like that. At least that's what appeared from that meeting I was watching. So I want to make sure that we'll be much more back and forth, the communication will happen, so we're prepared for those final votes to take place.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And a couple more questions that are more,
You get one, and then I'm gonna give it to Cliff, and then I'm gonna ask Scott, because
Okay,
I
all
don't
right.
want this, I
Yeah.
promised it was
Okay.
not a ready aim
No,
fire.
no.
And our job is to keep it really up high, right? The information we're giving you, because
Yeah,
when we
sure.
get to those specifics, and we don't have everything with us, right? Because
Mhm.
according to Peg, it was a conversation going back and forth, and Kristen as well too. So I'm always careful about giving numbers, right? Because if you're off by one single thing, right? And I always say to even my principals and administrators, when someone asks you a question, if you're not sure the exact answer, it's okay to say, I'll get back to you. Then giving a number out that I might be off by a couple, and then people are gonna hold us to it. So it's a practice that we're really working on.
So, okay, and consistent with that and Peg's directive on one question. In terms of having the school committee vote on a new number, an assessment number, can that be done once the district is clear on where the revenues are and clear on what that number ought to be? I mean, could it be later rather than sooner?
So I'm sorry, Dan, just for a second, let's be clear, that's school committee's decision, right? So they have three major roles, is hiring me or firing me, right? Policy, and the third one is the budget. So that's really a conversation that it has to happen with the chair and with the rest of the school committee before we give an answer to that.
On the timing?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. And you can appreciate that.
sure.
Doesn't sound like you can, but yes, we have to go.
Well, no, I just think that, because we were all acknowledging that we don't exactly know where the numbers ought to be,
Yep.
that it would make sense to have the numbers a little clearer in the district financial team before.
And that will go through school committee first.
Got
And
it,
then that will be
understood.
them that will give the information. And I'm really not showing a company line here, but that's really the proper way to do things, right?
I do understand.
Thanks.
Cliff, anything?
No, other than thanks for your presentation this
Mm.
evening. I appreciate the normalcy of this and respect both of you. And thank you for your work. Yes.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
it.
We look forward to working with everyone. We really do.
Awesome. Mr. Hopkins.
My question's more on process. It might actually be as much to you as anyone, but that the letters I read, I thought from Desi said that we didn't vote right in fiscal. I'm trying to figure out when we vote in at Maytown meeting, what are we voting on? Is it
One number.
one number, and what is included in the one number we vote on?
Everything,
So capital included.
correct.
And so it's the capital number, it is the Berlin number, Memorial School number, and the Donder number as one number.
That's my understanding.
And that the town really would then have no say in sort of how much is put into capital versus any of the individual schools. That's a school board decision.
If I'm, to the chair,
Absolutely.
if I may. So I think one of the problems here is how the votes are taken. And I'm only going to speak from experience, if I may, please. And this may not be the way it's done here, but it has been my experience in two regional districts that typically school committee votes a budget, let's just say $30 million. Okay. $30 million. Then depending upon the regional agreement and depending upon how the assessments are calculated, again, just my experience, is that they then vote 3 or 4 other numbers. What are those other numbers? Number 1, debt. Number 2, transportation. Number 3, MLC, minimum local contribution. Again, I'm just speaking from experience. And then the 4th number, which is an optional number, it's an optional number. And in one district, they exercised that option. In another district, they didn't. So the 4th number that would be voted then would be an operating assessment. So typically, school committee then brings to the towns, and I'm just speaking from experience to your question, sir, that the towns would vote the assessments, whatever they may be, either 3 or 4 assessments. Last spring, when I was in Athol Royalston, each town voted 3 numbers. That's it. They voted debt,
Okay.
they voted transportation, and they voted MLC, minimum local contributions. That's it. They didn't vote the budget, neither town. Yet that was different set of circumstances. I think,
Mm.
One of the things, if I may, Madam Chair, to the town administrator, that I think was in the letter from Jay Sullivan and also in conversations is that we really, really need to take a hard look as to how these assessments are being calculated. I think Mr. Sullivan mentioned in his letter that he had some concerns about the methodology.
And the
And I'm just paraphrasing from the letter about the methodology used to calculate the assessments. So it's been my experience, to the chair, to the gentleman, to Mr. Hawkins, that town meetings, the boards, they're not necessarily even touching the school budget, but rather the assessments in regions. Now, everyone may be a little bit different, and clearly there's a different scenario here. But I think that's going to be your work as we gear up and jump into FY 26, which is, knocking on the door.
It's your regional agreement, right? So
Yeah.
it really is laid out in that. And I know our regional agreement is sort of new, but to Dan's point, it looks different depending on what community, right? Camden, Wilbraham, where I came from, they each wanted it a little different, right? They voted on it a little differently. We had to present the budgets a little bit differently, even though our budget as a school district, our budget as a school committee, it was broken up differently for each town in the way they wanted to present it for the community. So I would go back to the question that you asked, Margaret, and through Kristen, Peg, sorry.
It's okay.
Madam Chair, but how do you want that? What's the expectations that you want from our district, right? In terms of what you're looking at, so that you're then presenting it to your towns as well, too.
And if I may, through the chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I should be better about that. I was trained that way as well. I think breaking down that information so that we understand what is going to where, if you will, because there is obviously Berlin Memorial, there's Boylston Elementary, there's Tohoto, right? So our interest in the way that we've looked at it in the past has been by school, because Tohoto obviously was part of the region initially, and then the elementary schools came in. So from my understanding and speaking with Desi, we always broke it out when we did the voting. So I think we still want to see the breakout so that we understand what is, essentially going where, so we know what the costs are at the schools, but not voting by school, because that's exactly, I think, when we say breaking it down and what the DESE concerns were, it was that we were actually taking a Tohoto vote and a Berlin Memorial vote. So their point, at least from what I understand from the Associate Commissioner Sullivan, was that we really, even though our methodology is a little confusing, we should work on the regional agreement. That should actually be something that we all work together on and make some revisions. And they offered to give us examples of how to do a less complex methodology, because they even noted in our conversations that they struggled at DESE trying to understand the originator's intent of that formula, of that methodology, that was a little bit complex. And I think part of it comes from the philosophical differences of the merger and the fact that we, did merge on paper, but sort of philosophically, and now even on a budget, we never really did merge it all together. And I think if those were my two takeaways from DESE, that we can't, vote by school, and that we really should take another look at the methodology in the regional agreement.
And the part of the regional agreement that make sure everyone's clear on that, through the chair to Kristen as well, too. I know you're aware of it. Any changes we make, and we should be revisiting our regional agreement, right? We're new to us, but any changes we make, right? And if it's even the slightest change, we have to bring it to both communities as well, too. And they have to vote on that as well, too. So there's work that needs to be done, but it has to be done as a team, right? Got to have people from the school district, school committee, people from the town of Berlin, town of Boylston. I mean, we made one change in terms of when one person when they get elected at the election, how long they stay, if they go the very next time or wait till that January 1st, or however we wanted to do that. And that was a tough sell for us to bring that back out to the communities and change that regional agreement. So just know that, even if we don't make any changes, just to look at the regional agreement and say, what are we thinking about for 5 years down the road, right? Because we're all developing something I'm gonna do here in Berlin, Boylston as well, too, is like, what's our 5-year strategic plan? We have a lot of other little things going on, but we really need a strategic plan. And that will guide this district, so that anytime that I'm looking to move in any direction, or anytime that someone says, I have a great idea for the town of Berlin, the town of Boylston, we can go back to that 5-year strategic plan and say, is it part of that plan? If it's not, then we put it to the side. That will help guide us for where we want to go. And that's some of the work we'll be doing this year as well too, with both towns.
Awesome. Well, I very much appreciate you both coming here. I know it's not an easy discussion to have to say. We've had a few hiccups with the financial numbers. This, for you coming here truly is, we're on our path towards a better plan next year to have that open communication with you and us and you and you. You know, to do that, so.
In the school committee as well too.
And the
That
school
big-
committee,
they're a big
absolutely.
piece of.
And the school committee who's sitting in the back. Yeah.
And online.
And I
And
think
I
there's
didn't
one
know,
online too.
but it's important, like,
Mhm.
it's all, we all gotta be working together.
Absolutely, absolutely, because again, you know, if you have one person who goes, it's, the process is sunk, and we are back with our category 5 budget storm that I highly doubt anyone wants to entertain going through again,
Yeah.
what we did. I keep thinking it's last year, but May and June was not all that long ago, so.
I think one of the most, the upsetting thing that ever have been asked in the 2 months I've been here, someone said to me, well, what side are you on? And I thought, what side are we on? Like, how are we moving in? And that wasn't from anyone on school committee or anyone on the select boards, but just a conversation in the community. I said, absolutely not, like, we're supposed to, how's that working out, choosing sides? It didn't seem to work out that well, in some of those meetings. So it's up to us to be working together, right? Rowing the boat in the same direction instead of rowing it in different directions, because
Agreed.
we gotta move this district forward.
Yes.
There's some things we need to do, and I'm gonna be coming and fighting like heck when I come to your meetings to say, we need the money for this, right? Because it costs money to provide a high quality education. You need to, besides having high quality teachers, it costs money.
And
Absolutely.
it's gonna give us an opportunity, you know, to say, which in the story that Al was alluding to, we were having difficulty, communication issue confirming that the gentlemen were coming today, so I took time off on Friday and I drove up and down Route 70 from the town
That she
offices
did.
to
That she did.
Tohoto, and the ladies at the front graciously went and found him during senior breakfast. So I promise you, I will never, ever do that again. It was just, I
My
knew that
wife,
you were.
my wife doesn't even do that.
But no, this is a great opportunity. As I said, I'm sure we will see you here more. We will have an opportunity to talk to you about our finances too, to say, you want $100, Berlin can only fork over $20. All right, well,
Yep.
what can we do to do this? So that we are transparent with what we anticipate coming through too for money, so.
And I know you're gonna be having similar conversations with the chief of police and the
Yeah.
fire and all that and stuff. And I support and appreciate that, but I'm gonna be fighting for our
Mhm.
kids, right, in our
Absolutely.
schools. And that's what the school committee hired me to do.
Yes.
And that's my job to do that as well. With obviously Dan and Aaron as well.
It's the art of negotiation.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate you
Thank
being here.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Scott, if you want to close your meeting?
A motion to adjourn the finance committee?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 7:39, you are out. Thank you, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys.
for everything.
Thank you.
And really retire this time, will you?
Yes. And please tell Marilyn I said hello.
Good to see you again, Al. Yeah, keep up the hard
Nice
work.
tie, Al. Love
Well,
your
but-
tie.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Honestly, everything.
I'll stand for dinner.
All right, well, while they're saying their goodbyes, we will continue on, so I tried to drag the agenda down to where we need to be. I think we are up to discuss possible vote on ARPA.
I actually, Donna, I still have some questions for the town administrator. I can hold it to select board questions at the end as well. That's better in place.
Go. Can't read your writing, can
No,
you?
I can't, give me time.
Do you want me to guess?
No. No, I'll wait.
Give you 3 guesses.
All right, if you remember,
Yep,
interrupt.
yep.
All right, ARPA.
So, good news, as Fred mentioned, the weatherization project is done. Sounds a little bit like for better or for worse, but it is complete. So that has actually returned some funding to the ARPA pool, if you will, in terms of funding remaining to be appropriated. This brings us to just over $35,000 to be appropriated, and have some ideas, wanted to get some thoughts from the select board as well. I know that the Recreation Committee was looking for a bit more funding potentially for the playground, although now we have to go out to bid with that, so
Have you heard
that's a
anything
little
on that?
challenging.
Have you heard anything back on their giant bid that they were looking for from a company from Texas that
We
we
have
can't
to
use?
put the whole thing out to bid. It's,
That's the 118?
it's because it's over $150,000 that it's coming in at. It does require a complete and full bid because it's a public works project, it's construction, it falls under chapter 3039M. If it was a supply order, it would be easier. We could use state bid for certain things, but when you get labor and installation involved, it pushes you over thresholds under which you can use the state bid list. So both the pavilion, believe it or not, and
Really?
because I said 150, I'm sorry, 50,000 is the threshold.
Okay.
So both the pavilion and the playground do come over that. The pavilion does have the funding allocated through a separate funding source, not ARPA, so we're not concerned about that. But as we discussed, I will be working on those interagency agreements, and my goal is to bring them to you in November. And it would not hurt to allocate potentially a bit more funding to that because we can reappropriate it to any over or under project, or we can put it, whatever's left, into the facilities, which we discussed doing as well. We also had that HR training. And I have a dream of a pilot town planner program with another town. But I am actually talking to CMRPC about potentially some opportunities. They're really getting into regionalization. Their staff is up to like 60 people now, and they are really ramped up and working for these smaller towns. So I'm kind of want to explore that a little bit more and see maybe if we can do something in FY26. So just more of appraising you and apprising you rather, and letting you know where we're at and seeing if you had any thoughts or opinions on what to do with that funding.
Do you have ballpark amounts for playground, HR, upstairs?
So playground, we allocated 180. The quote that Rec had came in at 194. Now that did include an additional piece of equipment replacing the dome that is currently there, which was not previously envisioned to be replaced. So that in and of itself, I believe, was $7,500. And there were some additional costs. The requirements, and also the desire to make it ADA accessible is what really drives up the cost of these projects. So looking at, how you can really make it as accessible, as possible within budgetary constraints is a challenge. That HR training was about $2,300. Upstairs reno, I am waiting for the final number from the architect on the materials list, and I should have that shortly from Chiefs. And then I will be able to see where we're at and how much we're going to ask for at winter town meeting, as I'm now calling it. So soon on that one.
So for the playground, are you thinking what, another 2025, which would like,
I was thinking
Suck
15
up
to
half.
20,
all right,
perhaps. But as you'll see later, I'm also thinking we should put in at least a $60,000 capital request for facilities. Facility needs that were identified in the study, not year one, like year zero.
Scott, you have thoughts on the 2, 4, 5 that Kristen has listed?
Yeah, the bottom ones,
Yeah,
I don't like spending money on staffing, and so a town planner pilot would not be one of my favorite things to do, because staffing, as we've learned from the schools, ARPA money, once the staff exists, they exist.
Yeah.
I think the bottom one is just too small to talk to ARPA about. I would do that through some other funding, and we can talk about that if we have some stuff left at the end of the year. I would almost take the 35 that we have left and add a project 22, which is facilities. I know that your scope is more than that. With the idea that we do it inter-office or inter-agency agreements on the remaining projects that are not completed, with the idea that we might have to move some stuff around. It won't get to all the 60,000 you identified, and whether we get to 20,000 of it or 50,000 of it will all based on some of the other projects that we might kick off one or two small things out of that. But I really think that that project is, after the things that have been on the list for a while, sort of move along.
Right. And we can shift, as you said, between projects
Yep.
that will be obligated
Mhm.
effective December 31st of this year, which all of these will be obligated.
Yep.
And there is a possibility that some of these things could come in lower. We have the 1870 Town Hall painting out right now, which was hugely popular. I can tell you Bullard is not gonna come in lower. The barn demo potentially could come in lower. Website will not. So those are
No, but
probably the
Bullard has
couple.
other sources of
Sources,
funding as
right.
well.
Well,
is
this
not
is the
that-
drainage. I'm sorry. I should be more specific. That funding has been really allocated toward the drainage, which the initial price just to update the designs and updates to be consistent with current stormwater regulations was $25,000, which I'm going back to the consultants and asking for, making sure there's no duplication of efforts and
Mhm.
understanding.
$25,000 on a design on how to run water down a hill that's less than an acre.
I'm not overly thrilled with that, so I want to get the meeting of the minds together, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. There's the ramp piece, the sidewalks, the street and complete streets and what's going on,
Those are all
so.
different.
They are, but they're impacted by what we just ultimately decide to do on the site. And the drainage does, believe it or not, tie in with all those. There's apparently a depression on the site where something was buried there and dug up, and that's where the water is pooling. There's water around the foundation, there's water in the yard. There's a lot going on over there. So I don't want to spend money needlessly, and I think needs to be explored further, and I'm going to be speaking to the Historical Commission Chair about that tomorrow.
Okay.
But there is plenty of things that funding can go to over at 1870 and Bullard, so I don't anticipate there being much wiggle room there, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my druthers, I would look at, the upstairs renovation probably needs to be the top one, because that has been such a need for fire, police and EMS, for police to move to, towards their full accreditation.
Well, it's also been a barrier towards recruitment,
Correct,
and
correct.
that costs us money too.
Yep.
Right.
The playground, yeah, we want it safe for little kids, and that little dome thing. I've fallen off of it, but I know it comes as a big shock to anybody, but it's not the safest thing. And then the HR planning, and then the last two. Yeah, I'm not overly excited, especially the last one. For that,
I think it's neat. I just think there should be another source of funding for it.
yeah.
I agree with you both on upstairs reno and facilities. The playground, when you look at the overall amount that we've allocated to that project versus what we've allocated to other
Mhm.
projects, it is a significant amount. And there are other funding sources available for recreation like CPA. So if for some reason it did come in, say at 200,000, could you potentially look to CPA to fill in some of those matching funds? I'm not committing them to that, but I'm just saying there are other
Correct.
options. So,
All right, so this one.
I'd like to potentially see one of those two as the top two as well.
So this one really, that vote ARPA project is
Think
just
on.
gonna be sitting on the agenda forever and ever and ever.
Well, no, we do have to appropriate the 35 by the end of December. So you're talking 2 months from now. So
We can spend that.
I figured we could, but I just wanted to get it on your radar, get you thinking about it.
Okay.
Yep, I don't think there's a vote for tonight.
Nope.
No. All right, appreciate that. So we're skipping down to the land use chart, not the chat, but the chart over at Solomon Pond. Tomorrow, Krista and I are meeting with planning board. Had to think a minute, planning board, because they will have gone through the same exercise. What the next steps are, I don't know. That's for the planning board to
Yeah.
decide, but I think that it is a great opportunity for, Scott and I to sit here and go, yes, no, maybe, across the board and, some, if we don't know what they are, then those become maybe with a question mark, so that if we end up going back to, the mayor and EDC, in Marlboro, that they can give a little bit more skinny on what insert item means.
Yeah, I still go back to, I just don't feel qualified that we have a planning commission for a reason. They are closer to this. They understand the big picture of the town, even better than I do. And.
But are there ones on here that you would really love to see, or ones that you're like, nope?
I'm a big believer. I wouldn't want to restrict the marketplace from doing things the market wants, I could really want a casino there, and if that's not what the market wants to build, I could want it till I turn blue in the face and it doesn't. And so I would love to like tie the hands of Fallen Pond as little as possible. With the idea that there could be something that is objectionable they bring forward. There's probably things I wouldn't want there, I'm trying to think of something that's so objectionable that no one would object to me objecting to it, but
Soil importation.
well, no, a power plant incinerator that just takes, industrial waste and burns it for things. It's probably not what we want in a mall area, but I mean, I look in some respects at the Sennies, like them or not, that they were a victim of some really weird changes in the market at various times, and just never, their vision of what they wanted to do never just really came to fruition.
Hmm.
And every time they did want to try to change, the amount of bureaucracy involved in trying to allow it to happen, even if it were good ideas, because they've had some ideas that were not the greatest for the town, was just so difficult. And I hear from business owners, just all the rules out there already. I get loath to just add another layer on top of things.
Well, and through the chair, if I may, I think that keeping things as broad as possible is really well, in my opinion, the right goal to have, because that's where you're going to attract the most development. And my understanding of what Marlboro did with the Donald Lynch Boulevard plan was to open it up and make it simpler. And what they're asking us to do is to tell them, are there really anything we're vehemently opposed to? I mean, that's really the exercise that they asked us to undertake, because they want to be able to say to developers, yay, you can come to the mall and you can do this. And it doesn't matter if it's Berlin and it doesn't matter if it's Marlboro. And I agree with you completely that when it comes to the zoning and the ins and outs, that's completely a planning board matter that we shouldn't be involved in. But Marlboro is looking to us for some guidance and some direction on uses. And I think perhaps the best way to do it is to give some of our feedback to the planning board, and they disseminate that back to Marlboro EDC.
Right. I mean, so like the schools where we can't say, you have $20, go spend it on blah, blah, blah. It's just, here's $20. This is kind of the same thing, is it's almost like a wish list, an okay list, and an absolutely not list. And, to Scott's point, there may be developers that come in and say, I'm only interested in putting in self-service laundry. Well, maybe that's one that no one wants, type of thing. So no, thank you, or maybe kind of sort of thank you. But I mean, to me, there were some definite no's on here. I'm just gonna list out a couple of them, like the medical marijuana treatment center and adult use marijuana retail. And even the medical use marijuana cultivator. Honestly, I think those have passed their prime. The time to
Right.
do that was a long time ago, and find a facility on a corner in any town. So I can't see us all saying yes.
Well, and I think that goes to the things I think I find most objectionable on the list. I can't imagine there's a market for it, or that someone in that industry would go for it. The rules around medical marijuana growing are substantial.
Yeah.
That is not a great place for it, even if you're in that industry.
That's why it's not already
And,
there.
And I trust that Sullivan Pond Mall is looking for things that would increase traffic to the area, and having it turn into a place that has 5 employees that are watching thousands of plants grow is not how you
Right.
generate traffic in the area. And so the other things that I thought were great on the list are along those lines that I don't think they would want them either. They'd almost want an empty space, hoping for something better over those sort of things. You know, the same sort of thing. I don't expect we want an airport there, but I can't imagine you would get an airport there.
Mm,
Uh,
newspaper, probably not.
yeah, newspaper printing is not a growing industry right now. There's not places looking to do paper printing, right? You know, soil removal, you know, it's not going to be a gravel pit
Right.
at Sullivan Pond Mall. But the things that are sort of commercial in nature, you know, restaurants, motels, brew pubs, the basic retail, you know, those are all things I think they're actively trying to do, and I, you know, would think are fine. I'd love to see some more eating places because they've lost almost all their eating places, but that probably means there's not a lot of eating places trying to go into places like that, but I'd like to see them because, you know, they would be the meals tax. It's a reason to go there. You get to do something else there. I could actually eat there before going to
Right.
a movie because I'm probably one of 50 people who still go to the movie theater there. Hopefully it's more than that. You know, I don't think they're, you know, some of the other stuff is just temporary things that they're going to do. I think it'd be an interesting conversation about where residential fits into this.
Mhm.
I am skeptical of it, but I don't want to do a blanket, you know, under no circumstance residential.
Correct.
And I don't want us to get bogged down in the residential either, because I think I think that there is more alignment on the residential than was previously thought, in that Marlboro has a lot of concern about taxing their public safety
Yep.
facilities as well, even though they do allow larger developments there. So the perception might be that that would be okay. They pretty much expressed to us that they would have concerns about any high number of units there.
I mean, it's
Um,
almost like if you could combine a brewery with some type of outdoor rec uses, and then to have a restaurant there so you can go play, have a beverage with your friends, and then walk across to go have a bite
What-
to eat. So
Yeah, like we just approved for Highland Commons.
Right.
I mean, and frankly, you know, it's not necessarily a loss of Sullivan. That's a private business decided where they wanted to be. That's where they chose to be.
right,
Is it Highland Commons? I think there are things out there, you know, I wouldn't mind a trade school there. I don't know how many trade schools are opening up, but you know, that brings customers into the space that do something there, training, and then are also there. On my way home, I'll grab, you know, some clothing, or I'll grab something
correct.
from the food court, or,
Nice big coffee shop would be awesome. You know?
Yeah.
Like I missed the one, the old bookstore that used to be, I think the $1.25 store is now, where you could go and grab a book and a giant cup of coffee and a big
Yeah.
squishy chair and sit there for hours, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. But yeah, I can't see a dry cleaning facility back there. There you go, Scott, an electric power substation for charging bulk power to distribution voltage. There's probably one that someone wouldn't want. But
although there are charging stations out there. so.
yes, there are, they're on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a church or religious building, probably not.
Probably not, but we also have less say over that because of the separation of church and state. We have less say
Correct.
over the religious
Dover.
buildings going in.
You know, drive-through facility, well,
We already get bylaws that say, no,
know.
we've already lost a lot of town because of that.
Mhm.
I know,
But
but
the voters of the town have spoken several times. They don't want drive-throughs, so.
correct. You know, narcotic detox, you know, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, there's just, as you said, there, you know, do I want a water tower over there? No. Do I want an airport or a heliport? No.
Right.
But would I love, as I said, a restaurant with a brew pub with maybe limited hotel to support the hockey rink down the road, where people need to go and stay for all these tournaments, and to provide them with other options to go eat
Mhm.
at. Yeah, it's almost like you need to think big picture what could potentially go in there that would relate to each other, that would complement each other is actually the word that I was looking for. You know, a bank? Probably not, you know,
Well, it had a bank and that left.
was there a bank in
Yeah,
there? Oh, there
Bank of
was this,
America.
right, when you
Yeah.
walked in, totally forgot about that.
I mean, it's been around many years. We could probably say was there X there at some point, and
There
X was probably
probably
there at some
was.
point in time.
But yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah, you know, trailer, mobile home, probably
Yeah.
not. But I would just love to be able to go back to planning and say, hey, you know, these are kind of sort of ideas that we're looking for, because I would love to have input, because ultimately, you know, whatever goes in there will impact you and I and you and
Yeah.
anybody up there.
I wonder if the way to approach it is to sort of red flag a few things, not a no, but some things that jump out at us and ask planning board to weigh in on them.
I go back to planning board are elected, they're closer to this, they have more knowledge than this. I have full faith in the people that we have appointed and elected to those positions to make these type of decisions. And don't think this is necessarily select board worthy.
I think that they were just looking to us for input as along with Marlboro, just to make it a bigger circle of acceptance, you know, is it
Yeah.
specific select board stuff? No. Is it comment? Yeah, and that's what I was okay with.
Right, and I think anyone in town could potentially pull this out. It's been on our agenda a couple times. The
Yep.
list, I think anyone out there who has opinions of what should happen at the Solomon Fun Mall, more than welcome to share it with both either planning board, but also I think EDC is also one of those that we've appointed that, you know, probably has a better pulse on this than we particularly do.
Well, and I think maybe we just keep in dialogue too with planning board and,
Yep.
you know, see where they're at and where this is going. And, you know, if we can be helpful in that connection with Marlboro, if, you know, we can, you know, the mayor and both the economic, I don't know her exact title, but she is the head of head of
Yeah.
economic development, if you will.
Yeah.
If they're literally opening
Yep.
their arms and saying, we'll come in, we'll help, we can
Right.
give advice, we can share data. You know, we can do anything that you guys, you know, really need of us to help expedite the process and help clarify questions. So, you know, maybe we keep those lines of communication open.
You know, just so that we can know, because we know as the mall goes up for sale sometime soon, as we know that, you know, Macy's will probably leave, as other stores inside, you know, may leave as well. It's just more communication, and maybe that will help to drive people's input to say, boy, we would love to see, and maybe they can
Yeah.
find a developer who
Yeah.
can. Maybe they can find a developer who does choices 10 through 15. I don't know.
You know, I think as a whole, the mall has more going in than leaving right now. And my numbers are a little low, but I thought that Macy's on a per square footage was doing better than almost any of the ones in the region.
We had heard that they were going out, so
um,
whether that's
mm,
changed or not,
yeah.
I don't know.
So that mall has less competition than the ones over in sort of east of here, that there's a lot of malls in an area, so. Because it's sort of at the intersection of two significant highways, it doesn't have a lot of other stuff around it, it does become a draw unto itself.
Well, you and I can go back to
Yeah.
planning tomorrow.
Yep.
And chat with them. I can offer to be their scribe as to what they're looking under yes, no, maybe, and then just ask them what their next steps are. Where they're gonna go and what they're gonna do.
Do we have a select board liaison to the planning board?
We don't, because our liaisons are to committees that we appoint
Ah, okay.
officially,
I'm used to having
But-
both.
Yeah.
right? I
Um,
mean, we could have both, but when it was put together, it was to committees that we appoint.
okay. I was just thinking, you know, if that's something that there's an interest in, perhaps we have a select board member kind of, you know, be, I don't know, not maybe an official liaison, but somebody who kind of helps keep those lines of communication open. That might be beneficial as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially as they start to talk about the, you know, the dwelling units, and I'm sure people are gonna be interested in what the impact is to town, and how many can I have, and
Right.
how quickly can they go in, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm being asked a lot of questions from different angles about the ADUs, and I'm tracking it because it is really a hot button topic. So at some point, we may pull the various groups together as we
Yeah.
talked about on that and have a big kind of just group discussion on it, but we
Yeah,
need more
'cause
info.
When Brett
First.
Kilcoyne and Senator Kennedy were there, they said that things are changing daily
Rapidly.
at their level. So if they're changing up there, I'm sure by the time it gets down to us, game of operator, it's completely different than what it is up on the hill.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's anything that you know, Scott, you
Mhm.
definitely want, shoot it through Kristen, and then we'll just chat tomorrow
Mm.
with our planning board, the PB. All right, so next up is to review and discuss the draft winter special town meeting warrant.
Scott, I'm just wondering, because it printed differently than it's saved.
Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't. No, it printed differently than it saved. Okay. So if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, I just want to walk you through. We have 15 articles. The first would be operating budget transfers for FY 25. We have 2. The first would be the transfer of funds out of the regional intermunicipal animal control officer line item, which is an expense line item under intermunicipal government expenses, because that IMA unfortunately did not come to fruition. It did fall through, but fortunately, our ACO agreed to stay on independently with us at a far cheaper cost. So it worked out to our benefit. But June and I were kind of discussing this. It may make the most sense because she's supervised by the police department and paid through the police department to put that into the police wages and expenses budget. And the negotiated amount with her was $12,000 for wages and $1,900 for expenses. So a far cry from $22,000.
So it's just a shift.
So it's just a
Same
shift.
bucket, just a shift.
Yep, because right now we don't have a mechanism
Yep.
to pay. We are paying,
Right.
but we don't, we're gonna get caught up at some point.
Right, I thought there is some inter-line transfers that we can do ourselves and not take up time at special town meetings, though.
That does happen at the end of the year. I don't know if we would have enough. I was just thinking this amount might be high enough that we might need to, but then
you could do
again,
reserve fund transfers at any point during the year, so you could do
Yep.
13,000 out of reserves into police and wages, and then at some point, when we do end of year transfers, just transfer 13,900 out of that line item into wherever it's needed somewhere else in the budget.
I am
Whatever's
fine
easiest.
with that. Yeah, I'm just used to people liking the transparency sometimes of understanding like that didn't happen with the IMA, and so this is what we're
Yeah, I
doing.
just-
But to take up time,
Time at
Yeah.
town meetings.
I see it both
Has zero
sides.
impact to the taxpayers. It doesn't add any service, doesn't change, subtract any services.
That's
Doesn't
true.
even change the personnel who are doing the services.
Okay,
The problem is you still have 1B, and so you're still.
well, then I
gonna
could just
talk
make it one.
Yeah,
All right, do you have any thoughts or opinions on that one, Peg?
Whatever's easier for you, June, honestly. I'm fine with either.
We may actually have enough because of what we're doing in 1B, which I'll try to explain in the least complicated way possible. 1B actually addresses our negotiation that happened before town meeting in June with the schools in a very odd sort of way, it seems. But this is the recommendation from DOR. They are actually recommending that we transfer the $116,000 that we want to spend from public safety stabilization to police department wages, and the 116,000 that we had raised in raise and appropriate, they do not use, and that flows to free cash. They are saying that is the easiest way for us to do it, rather than try to do a switcheroo around with the schools on the free cash side. Am I explaining that correctly?
I thought this was the much I was expecting.
Oh, good.
So. yeah.
I was trying to do it in my head in a
Yeah.
far more complicated way, so this is the way. So, but also because we had that extra money, it would we could pay for the animal control out of that, and then the animal control would flow to free cash. It would all balance out one way or the other. So that's why we don't necessarily need 1A.
I mean, as long as we're able to track.
Yep.
Money bucket.
Oh yeah, that's
then-
not extra free money.
Yeah.
That is going to flow to free cash.
Okay.
All right, Article 2 would be the extra money we discussed from the Highland Commons Public Safety Mitigation Funds to the second floor renovation project. We are very close to having that number. I should have it by the end of the month. And that will include the remaining costs for materials and the 15% fee to Assabet. The designs are almost 100% complete at this point, and that comes with the building materials cost list. So then we will be able to price it out.
Do you expect that to start before the end of the year or January?
They want to start
Now,
yesterday. So yes, as soon as the design is ready, they're ready to go. They already have the ARPA money that they can start off with. And they'll get started, and then hopefully we can add this at
Okay.
December town meeting and roll from there.
Okay.
The police chief has actually requested the purchase of the annual cruiser to go on the December meeting rather than the May meeting because they are so back ordered. And they're just climbing extensively in price, as you can see. The price now for one hybrid Explorer is $75,000 at this time. However, there are some grant funds that may be coming in that could be used to offset this, so we're waiting to see, but we wanted to put the total price in of what it would be if those grant funds don't come through.
Why are we doing a hybrid vehicle and not an electric vehicle? I mean, I know that we don't want all electric vehicles because some we need to go a little bit further, but we're a town with 42 miles of road. I mean, you're never gonna be all that far away from, you don't need every vehicle to be able to go several hundred miles away from town.
There are challenges with the public safety vehicles being pursuit rated at this point and being able to ramp up. From what I understand in the conversations I've had with both the police chief and the fire chief, there are a lot of concerns around electric vehicles for fire trucks and police vehicles in
Yeah, I'm
terms
not
of,
worried about, but this is a police vehicle, so fire trucks, I get
Yeah,
a different story.
but also just being able to ramp up and being able to have the, I'll have to have Eric explain. I can't remember the exact terminology, but there's an issue with the,
all the stuff, did he say something like all the
Right.
stuff that needs to go inside, that there's not enough power in the car?
Right, and I believe that
To
I've heard
withstand
that
it.
those issues have generally been solved, and so
Okay.
if this is a
Okay.
vehicle that we're getting a year from now.
let me ask him to look into it and I'll get more information on that.
And I feel like every time I turn around, we're buying another vehicle, and so I'd love at some point to understand sort of the laddering we're doing to make sure that we're not buying 8 vehicles in 2 years and then. And because I thought in ARPA, we did a police cruiser just like a couple weeks ago, it feels like, and
Yep.
so.
So this would
And
be
so we
for
did-
26.
Right, so we did one at the last town meeting, we did one with ARPA, and now we're doing another, that's 3 within the last, 6 months? That seems,
They're basically on once a fiscal year is the way
Right.
it comes in. 1 year has to do 2. So it's on a replacement plan. I can get that
Yeah,
mapped
just
out
that-
for you.
to me, it feels like we've done 3 in the last 6 months, and so that's,
Yeah, because a couple
That
were
seems a
really
lot.
back ordered. Yep. I can get that
well, I
replacement
think we
plan
improved
mapped out.
pricing for 3 in the last 6 months.
Perhaps. We went back and got a 23 with the ARPA money to save money.
And then we got
Right.
the new gray one that's out there.
That's that one.
Right,
Okay.
Because
I
it
just-
had to be a different color after it came in because that was all they could get.
right.
So, yeah. All right, let me get that.
Want to make sure that we're
replacement plan.
not changing the ladder to doing this.
And we're still
And if we
going,
did this, we wouldn't do then one in May.
Correct.
so we're still doing,
Because then you could order it now.
a
Yeah.
car comes in, a car goes out, so the
Yep.
fleet isn't
Yep.
gigantic.
Yep.
And then we have to determine what car goes out and to whom it's going.
Yep.
Okay, kind of like
Or
how
just
we
get
gave it to
sold.
fire.
Yeah.
Right,
All right.
Municipal is great, or you can actually just do a bid through the town, which I have docs for, and I actually gave to the fire chief for the truck.
Trucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still discussing this with Tim Wysocki. Unfortunately, we did not receive the grant. I was bummed about that, to say the least. For an energy manager from the state, there was stiff competition and we just received a large green communities grant. So I believe that even though they didn't come out and say that, I believe that weighed into
Mhm.
it as well. However, we have over $100,000 in adder funds, and I think this is a worthwhile project to get us to a climate leader community and also to help us with energy efficiency upgrades in our buildings.
Mhm.
So we need to just kind of see what that would look like now with those funds. So I don't have a dollar amount yet, but we do actually have to do a town meeting transfer out of stabilization. Unfortunately, it requires a 2/3 majority to put those funds into an account. Is it a special revenue fund that it would go into or just a special article? Okay, in order for us to be able to actually use those funds. Anything out of stabilization is 2/3 votes. They initially recommended we put it into a stabilization fund, and now they are recommending it go into a special revenue fund. So fortunately, they've given us the language to revoke their original recommendation. But that is basically just a housekeeping item that we need to do. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we need to amend the recreation revolving fund bylaw to include wages as an eligible use, retroactive back to July 1 of 24. We need to see if the town will amend the Community Preservation Act Committee bylaw to remove the defunct housing partnership member and add a member from the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, which now receives direct CPA funding. The moderator has requested that we adopt an electronic voting bylaw. Actually, this should be amend because we're amending our existing Article 2, Section 7 of the Town of Berlin's general bylaws to add when electronic voting is available. That will replace counted standing votes or votes by.
Right, and
show
you'll
of
save
hands.
us at every town meeting having to pass a rule saying that we do electronic voting. Yep.
Correct. So another housekeeping one.
Mhm.
Article 9 is a really interesting one. This is the Massachusetts Prudent Investor Act. So if we adopt MGL Chapter 203C, it allows municipalities to invest in a manner that's similar to banks, allowing for more diversification of investments, which I have in there twice, thereby lowering investment risk and allowing for more flexibility. So you're allowed to invest in what are called certain blue chip companies. And right now, the legal list of investments that the town can use is quite limited and infrequently updated.
And if we
So
make this change, it's still the select board that sets what that investment policy is. This just allows that policy to be more flexible if we so choose.
the select board sets the policy. The treasurer, once the policy is
Mhm.
set, can move that money without authorization. So that just opens that up for further discussion. And then Article 10 was an interesting one that I talked to Tim Wheeler about, and he didn't know if the select board might want to sponsor this one. It's adopting MGL Chapter 40, Section 15A, that reduces the number of votes needed to transfer municipal property from a 2/3 vote to a simple majority vote. And one group that would benefit substantially from this is the Housing Trust for transferring land for affordable housing projects, but it could potentially assist other groups as well. So it just makes it easier for land transfers of municipal property to occur. So that's a one for discussion for you guys.
I want, because it also just means it's easier for something to get rammed through that really isn't the
Mhm.
will of the people.
Mhm.
True. Although it still requires 50%.
Yeah, I would like to know a little bit more pros and cons because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay. Do we want to maybe wait till May on that one and do
At
some more
least May or at
research?
least next December, if we could pull that for this,
Yep.
because I think that takes more conversation.
Mhm.
I also worry that with some land transfers on the agenda, that people might say that the housing trust is trying to, push things through, and I'd like things as simple as we can for the housing trust.
I think that makes sense politically. More research, okay. And then the next article is to amend, I did get the article number 7-1 of the FY 2022 special town meeting, which allocated funding for the roof replacement at the old fire station, and we're asking to allow that funding to be used for demolition of the old fire station, as the select board discussed.
Oh, fire
And
station
rescue building.
And rescue building.
Thank you.
You and I both got that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is why we all go over
Right-
this
right-
together.
At the end of like, oh, we can tear down one of the two buildings and now. we can-
Yeah, no,
Pick one.
thank you. Thank you. This is why it takes a village.
Yep.
Yeah, because and plus two, going back up to your other one, your description on 10, Article 10, I think it's missing a word. This will the housing trust. I think this will help.
Oh, help,
But
yes, thank you.
Ken is being pulled, yes.
And this, by the way, is not a final
Oh, I know.
draft.
I
So,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
but thank you. Anything you see, let me know, because I will fix it and that will help. Town council is drafting Article 12, which is the amendment of the conservation restriction and extending the River Bridge purchase and sale. Article 13 and 14 and 15 all actually pertain to the housing trust. Article 13 is transferring the funding from that affordable housing donation account that's currently overseen by the planning board to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. June, can you make a note? We have to figure out the numbers on that one. The
13?
Article 13, well, now it's gonna be 12, but once I take that one out. Or yeah, exactly. And we do need to leave some annually, that $7,000 a year from that does pay for, our folks over at the Assabet Housing. So that would have to either be assumed by the housing trust in some way or set aside.
I know the Housing Trust thought that they were already doing that vote of the 7,000, because I thought we just did it at our last meeting to approve it. But
That's to pay it, but right now but we also have to appropriate it in the budget every year at town meeting. It actually is a budget line item that comes out of this donation account right now. So,
I'm sure either one works.
yeah. I imagine CPA funding can also be used for that too, because you're hiring a affordable housing consultant. So just something to
Yeah.
keep in mind. We do need funding for that every
Yeah.
year if we want to keep them. And then Article 14, transfer and disposition of Legion Hall to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
I question that one, especially where a resident has come forward and said that they are interested in it, so I would hate for that resident to think that we're just plowing them over and saying, so sad, too bad, we'll do what we want, we don't care.
I think we're looking for the best use of that. We need more affordable housing in town, and so someone to have a side lot where that is just not I think the best use for the town.
I know, but I'm just looking at optics, where a resident has stepped forward.
It does have to go, if it doesn't go to the trust, well, either way, it has to go through an RFP process. So we can't just give it or transfer it to the
Correct.
neighbor. And at that point, when you open it up, anybody
Anyone.
could bid on it rather. So I think the policy decision is, do you want it for affordable housing or not? I will tell you the same, the person has said they specifically do not want affordable housing at that site. So that is part of the driver, which obviously we want to be respectful too of people's opinions, particularly adjacent property owners. But I really think this is a policy decision or town meeting vote to make a determination of, do we want more affordable housing and what are the best sites for it to be at? And that could be potentially controversial. I can see that.
Well, you know what, I mean, if the family interested in that, I would be interested to see if they would come to town meeting and make their case and let the people decide as to which way we're going.
Could certainly.
And then this way, the optics are clear.
Yep.
They're fair in the fair and open to say, if you're interested, come voice your opinion. If
Yep.
you're not interested and you don't show up, silence pretty much means acceptance, at least to me.
Well, and I think that's a nice courtesy to extend to say, we hear you, we're not ignoring you.
Well, and I believe the Housing Trust will also discuss this as well in light of the email that was brought in.
Perfect. And then Article 15, I still need to get
I can't find the address.
Okay.
of Allen Road.
so we'll put a
So-
parcel number
so
then.
I asked the assessors, and I asked it in a way that must have confused them, because I got the history of 104 Allen Road, which is not the land that we're looking at. There's a
Okay.
blank space of land between the two of them. And there is, I'm worried that there's a lot of confusion about that space, because the other
Okay.
couple of people I've asked about it all said that that has a conservation restriction on it, which the Conservation Commission is quite clear that there is no conservation restriction on it. The conservation restriction is on a different piece of property that is also on Allen Road, but not that particular one. And that the Housing Trust has been working with conservation. In fact, when we did our tour of the town of a handful of properties, a member of the Conservation Commission, Carolyn, was with us to make sure that there was, you know,
Right.
both because she has the better eye of, oh, that's a wetland, or
Yes.
that's not, that we might not be aware. And so some of the lands were chosen and not chosen because of her, I want to say her personal, because she's just a member of the Conservation Commission, but she is the chair and knowledgeable and can help us point out what might be problems. And so that's why the two properties were selected.
Okay, that was gonna be my other question,
Yep.
is the vetting part.
Yep. And again, I think this is again part of the process. I mean, even if this is passed at town meeting, it doesn't mean a house is going up even in the short term. There's still the filing process. As you point out, there's still an RFP process that has to go on.
Right.
I think we only have enough money right now for one property to be built and not two. I think we're going for both of them because we think they both have some potential pitfalls to them, and to make sure something gets across the finish line at some point they're going for both of them. There's a chance one of them comes back to the town. There's a chance that we go to town meeting in the future for some, then I say we, because I sit on the housing trust.
That's
That, we come back later on, I can, and so, yeah, they were, of the 6 or so properties that we've looked at in person and the 30 or so properties that we've looked at as a whole, these showed the most promise for something that is fiscally doable in a responsible way, in ways that would actually, attract, good families interested in affordable housing.
And you've looked at, or talked to Rich or Rich about, like zoning and code
Yeah,
a little bit.
we're going through a lot of the, and yes, the Legion Hall has the most hoops you have to go through. And so it could be that even if everyone in town totally agreed with it and thought it was a great idea, the number of hoops you have to go through, that's several years before that's gonna happen. And the journey of 1,000 miles starts with your first steps. And so we're starting with the first steps to get us there. The other former school buildings have already sort of been converted to housing, and so the town has done this with some of the other schools that were built at the same time. And so it is quite doable.
I think it would make a cool looking house.
Yeah, actually,
But
the members of Habitat Community Hope toured it with us were really excited about that place, and the housing was like, this is gonna take a bunch of work, like
Yeah.
politically, because it's
not
not
tomorrow.
It takes some ZBA stuff, it takes some planning stuff, it has to go through Title V, there's a lot of steps to go. But again, the journey, you want to make sure historic gets some say in it as well, to make sure that they're not gonna somehow, bastardize the building so it loses all of its historic charm. Although I don't think that's a problem, because I think what makes it exciting to have it humanity is the historic charm of the
Correct.
building. And so,
so you're not
Um,
demolishing the building, you're just
right.
refurbishing it, so
Yep.
it may not even have to go through historical at all.
yeah, officially, even if it didn't have to, I think that to get their sort of like, here are things
Well
we
said.
think are more important to save than others, and even just their knowledge of what used to be there and other things that they just might be fine to, if you're a future owner of the property, to just know more of the history of it, I think would be, if they even did nothing but had a small little booklet that went with the house that talked about its history, I think
Mhm.
an owner would find that fascinating. Of course, I love history, so I would have loved to have more of that about my own house, but yes.
Well, and is there anything that we need to do with the American Legion, because that is the American Legion Hall?
Yeah,
I
and then
mean,
some of the stuff we
so
also have to work on as well.
there's that too, because I
Yep.
think that you need to give them a place to meet, so giving them a place to meet isn't necessarily there, or do we say, pick a room here, pick town hall, I don't know.
The housing trust have walked over, they listed various people and various stakeholders in town to work with on that. On all the little issues, to turn that into something more usable for the town and better for the sort of just society.
And all the issues that you ran into for trying to look at land on Lancaster Road.
Yep.
Those are all taken into consideration as you're looking to make sure that whatever missteps were missed, that you're not missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one is potential short-term borrowing. We'll know more in a couple of weeks to see where we're at. We are going through the recon, but as you know, there's a delay in putting out the tax bills, which makes us have a cash flow potential issue. So that may have to happen, and I'll have more information on
And this is
that.
borrowing from our own funds. It's
Our
not borrowing
own.
Fund, this is not borrowing
Correct.
from a bank, right?
I did see a neighbor offer to come
not
down
our
and
own?
stuff envelopes.
Oh, I thought this was. Oh, I thought this was from like stabilization and. Okay, I misspoke.
So this one is from where?
Would you come up and explain? I know, sorry, you're here. I'm bringing you up.
Well, you can go over there, whichever's closer. Pick one. You
There
have
you
your,
go.
or if you had a chair on wheels, you could just slide in between. Mm-hmm.
No, this would be in anticipation of taxes. We haven't done it in a really long time, but the main reason for this is we don't have any interest set aside if we were to short-term borrow until the tax money comes in.
Okay, right, okay. And that's not something we could do with a reserve fund transfer for the interest component of it?
Well, maybe if it was unexpected. It could be.
I mean, this is certainly an unforeseen.
Yeah, I
or-
don't know what the interest rate
Yeah.
would be or anything like that. That's all on Kathy's end, but.
Right, but we don't, what you
But we
said,
don't have any actual money available.
right, we don't have a line item in the budget for interest.
Correct.
To, yeah, okay. Yeah, we haven't flushed this one out fully, obviously. Or I haven't rather. If we're short, okay. So we'll talk more.
So when will this be needed to be complete for printing?
So,
Mailing?
I will ask the board I will have a final one for you and ask, well, in advance of the 4th, but ask the board to sign it on the 4th. I am, Scott Schultz doesn't know this yet, but gonna ask the FinCom to take their votes on the 5th. And, the goal is to get it to the printer on the 6th. And once I now know how many pages it is, I can get an estimate of how long it'll take for them to get it out. It will be shorter than annual town meeting because it's only like 12 pages.
Yeah.
Whereas it's pretty much double for annual. So I imagine by mid-month, we will have it out. Mid-November, rather.
I thought one of the main drivers of this meeting was an earthworks bylaw that I didn't see on the list of 15.
That one we do have town council working on, but we had said we could do it in May. So that is going on the May town meeting.
Okay. We had several bylaws that we've bandied about that aren't on this, and kind of hoping that bylaw things were sort of December so that May it can be focused entirely on budget stuff, but
What were the other ones that you
we
were?
talked about a recall bylaw, because the Berlin doesn't currently have any ability to recall, and I didn't want to do that last May because
It was
the people
just-
pushing it had a specific person and entity in mind, and I never want to do those sort of policies, run any
Mhm.
sort of, and since that has died down, trying to do it when there's not.
I am happy to add that. I have it ready to go.
And we're not, I'd love to have had more conversation about an underride, but it's clear this not gonna be something that could be put together in time for the December town meeting.
If you're both open to recall bylaw, I mean, I have something literally almost ready to go because I was preparing for it as we talked
Yep.
about in May, but then we pulled it and I guess I misgauged your interest. I
Yep.
didn't think there would be interest, so I didn't want to bring it back up.
I have interest, the idea that we don't have recall at all, I find problematic. Just as I found it problematic that you would write it for a particular person. But I think that, especially since, well, you didn't write it for a person, the idea was brought up for that,
Right.
you've taken what's best practice from other towns and put it in.
Exactly.
I think if it's relatively ready to
Mhm.
go, these are the process and under circumstances where we could recall an
Right.
elected official, I think is worthy of having.
I'm fine with that.
I will add it. That's easy enough.
All right, so next meeting, we'll just
Okay.
plop this on the
Yeah.
agenda. Okay.
And the
Okay,
warrant
no,
will
this is
close. The warrant will.
It's where my mouse sits.
Oh.
It's not impacted.
That's like when I start to
How's it
touch.
working for you?
touch my
Your
screen.
cursor moving around out there?
I didn't bring a mouse, but it's my touchscreen laptop, so I can.
All right, so we'll just move this over to our next meeting on the.
I think it was in
Fourth.
really good shape, because I mean, we've seen things 2 weeks out from deadlines that have not been in as good shape as this, and so I appreciate how far along this is.
Oh, good, thank you.
And we're scooting down. We really only have one more item, and that is to have a chat about FY 26 capital request for facilities improvements.
And I did have an opportunity to have a further discussion with Fred this afternoon, so I did put an updated spreadsheet in the folder. And we're up to just over 60,000. We think a 10% cost escalator, given the fact that this will be a 2-year-old price by the time these projects likely happen, is a better estimator than a 7.5% cost escalator that I had on there. And Fred was also recommending with the sidewalk at the library, there was also a parking lot repair recommended for 24, and it would be economies of scale to do both of those
Mhm.
together because they're interconnected. So that ups that third item from 9,500 to 12,800.
You're talking about sending these to capital planning.
Correct. So the idea would be to submit a capital planning request by their October 31st deadline for those immediate projects. And there's a mix of studies in here as well as actual hard construction or repair
And
work.
do we do studies that are less than $10,000 we send to capital planning?
So
I
that's
mean,
a
I
good
could see that
question.
I could see
Yep.
that in an ARPA pool, we might pull it, but I don't know. It is study, not capital, and it is not, I didn't think it was a level of materiality to get it to capital either.
I could split it off and make it its own special article. I was thinking for simplicity's sake of pulling everything from the facility study in together into one sort of like omnibus request, but I see what you're saying. It is related to renovation. But you're right, technically, we don't ask them for master planning money for, the planning board to weigh in on that, so.
And that really for the whole facility study we've done, that 60,000 is everything it had for immediate year one?
Immediate for right now, and then years 1 through 3 is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I mean, yeah, this year wasn't that.
This is
Mhm.
2023, mind you now, because we're a year
Right.
out.
Correct, yeah, there wasn't, I think the original, I forget what the original amount was, but we started taking things out, like the painting at
Yeah.
1870, so
Yeah.
that was, a gigantic chunk of money, and there were some buildings that had zero for current year.
And some buildings were taking down. potentially,
That's-
that won't.
And that's just it too, if you look at old fire,
Good.
old rescue, that was a chunk of money for current, but if they're getting flattened. then
And this
that comes
building,
out
we've
the pot.
done heating and AC and roof recently, and so there's not any sort of big stuff left for this building.
Other than the HVAC that we have the Green Communities
Yeah.
grant for, that's the big one.
Mhm.
And kind of my process for this was I took those first like chunk of the facility studies for each one and I went through, and as you said, there are buildings we're not touching. The only one that was like, was the old highway garage, which we haven't much talked
Yeah.
about. And that immediate repair was the bathroom, which again, we're not in a place to make a
They also
decision about
don't have
that.
water, so.
Correct.
Correct.
So other than that, these are the facilities that we are keeping for sure that have immediate needs.
So I'm curious on the municipal office sidewalk repairs, weren't sidewalks part of the thing that just got fixed not all that long ago?
When I talked to Fred about that today, there was one that apparently didn't get done. It's the one where the mailbox is. And if you look at the picture of it, you can see that the sidewalk has sunk above the granite curbing. So it's actually creating a trip hazard there.
Okay.
So we wished, I guess, that it had been done there. I don't understand exactly why it wasn't done back
Yeah.
when the parking lot was done, but that predated me.
And when it comes to areas of responsibility. Shouldn't, so I'm trying to figure out, because we did the facility study, the building's sort of going, but where role does the library board come in setting what is the proper sort of order of getting things done at the library?
Great suggestion. So I talked to Victoria about this. I talked to her about doing the immediate needs at the library and if there was anything else. And the door
Mhm.
at the library, which is not in the study, is another high priority need. She's going to submit a separate request for that because it's not specifically
Mhm.
mentioned in the facilities study.
Right.
So I can certainly ask her to forward this if, this is amenable to the board, to forward it to the library board of trustees and get their input on it as well.
And then in the plausible deniability levels, if we had all these studies done and they found 6 figures worth of repairs, are we then suddenly having to do large repairs if these studies find significant problems?
So they're just a study. It's not going to the state. It's not going to like the Architectural Access Board. That gets triggered when you start to actually do repairs. That's a good question.
Right, and those studies, if we're trying to make the parking lot and sidewalk better, that's not gonna trigger anything in those studies.
So question on the sidewalk repair, I know, when we held the complete streets and there was quite a bit of pushback to stick the EV chargers on the corner and for it to come to the municipal building. If we fix the sidewalk, do we kind of sort of maybe have an idea where the charges would go? Because I would hate to fix the sidewalk and then for somebody to say, hey, you know, if we put 2 charges right by the mailbox, that would be really good, and then we'll just have to dig that up again. I mean, that's my only concern about moving forth with that if we fix it once. A la Bullet House, I don't wanna fix stuff and then the town hall finds something and then we have to rip it up and do it again, so. I don't know where because
me
originally
ask.
that's where the chargers were kind of
On
sort
the
of.
side where the 2 parking spaces are here?
Yeah.
Really? I don't know why I always had it in my head that you were talking about the last couple of parking spaces over by public safety where the cruisers park.
No,
Okay.
right by the door so that you could easily pull in, charge, pull right out, and you've got the building.
Okay, that's a
Right
really,
there.
let me talk to Fred about that.
Yeah, we'll might find problems when we get the grant, and why it doesn't happen is that's an economic development grant designed to be near businesses, which this is not.
I know. I know. But I'd rather play devil's advocate and think of what if,
Yep.
because I know
Um,
that was Victoria's concerned as well, because when I go down for my books. And I kept pushing her to go after like CPA money, this is a historical building, what do you need? And she was like, well, we want to put a 5-year plan in place, we don't want to ask for $20. And then realize that, oops, we're gonna rip up the $20 and then put down $40, so I know that she's being very cautious.
I think there has to be a sidewalk there for connectivity and possibly accessibility reasons coming in off the street. So I don't think they can remove that sidewalk. I'm gonna ask. But I also know the 2 charging stations that I put in at the town hall and the library, literally the infrastructure like went on the building. Like it didn't actually
Okay.
go into the sidewalk. And it literally just went through like existing, structures like through the ground if they had to. They did, I'm trying to think how they did it.
Well, if you end up with a charge point infrastructure that is a pole, if you just do it like a charger like some people have at their houses that doesn't have the ability to collect revenue.
Right.
And which was one of my concerns earlier on is that the infrastructure you need to collect revenue is probably way more than the revenue you'll ever get, and that just giving it away, is cheaper, because I know prices have gone up, but the chargers I have in my house were like $1,000 and not 40,
Right.
It takes a lot of electricity to make up 40 grand
Mhm.
of difference.
It does, that's true.
But I mean, I think that as a list to capital planning, especially since we're sort of at the sort of deadlines of getting, so I think this is a fine list. I mean,
Well-
it is not a list pulled out of thin air. It's a list that has a lot of rationale behind it. It's it was the immediate needs identified in the facilities that we paid for.
Yep.
Go for it.
And I think, and one of the things I have to talk to capital about is their bylaw, because it's actually it is broader than I'm used to seeing for capital committees. We had a discussion that they had weighed in on things like funding for master planning before, which I didn't really see as something that would come under the purview of a capital committee. This, I think you have more of an argument for when you're talking about studies on buildings, and, to me, I look at that almost like a phase 1 to doing any kind of renovation. So I can certainly split it out if you like. I don't know if that's confusing or more confusing to voters to not have it all together and have 2 separate, I'd have to have
A
Mm,
it
vote on
in
studies,
different
a vote on
articles.
actual work, I think people would be able to figure out.
I have a
But-
question on the curatorial building.
Mhm.
Why are we bothering to do anything on ADA? Because,
Yeah, it's not a public building.
no, it's not a public building, so.
You could have an employee that wants to work there and needs to be able to get upstairs. That was a question I was going to ask you, but that is one of the things the study said, is that building should be ADA accessible.
And it wasn't thought of.
So we're gonna
when
put
it
an
was built?
elevator because we someday might have an employee who might someday want to store something on a second level.
Which
It's
is
more that
kind
it doesn't meet code for ADA,
yeah, but you know what? Bullet House doesn't meet code for ADA either, so.
but that's new construction versus renovation, and you're
It
hitting, you
got
have an
all
extra
relevant
30%.
building permits when it was put together.
Let me pull up what they said.
Curatorial really is the only one that I would be absolutely,
I'm totally fine with it being struck. Let's make it
all right, there you
All
go.
right.
let's keep the total at 60,000, strike the curatorial storage building. thinking that again, with escalators, that's gonna cover it because these are 23 quotes.
Correct.
So remove curatorial and
Yep.
keep it at, I can't say that word, and keep it at 60 grand.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay,
All right,
will do.
easy peasy. Let's see what's left. Just updates. Got any, Scott?
What's the process for setting the COLA for fiscal year 26?
Goes to the Personnel Committee. I make a recommendation to them at their meeting on October 30th, and then it comes to the Select Board for a vote on November 4th.
These are all not connected. These are bullet points.
That's okay.
What was the attendance like at the meeting you had for the streets grant?
Oh,
It was
it was
great.
full.
Good.
You had a member from, we'll go around the table. You had a member from First Parish Church, me, 19 Carter,
Ed.
General Store, 2 from the general store, Fred,
The Chiefs.
Historical, yep, the Chiefs. I think there was somebody else there.
Right.
Jane
Yeah,
Sawyer.
yeah,
came
like private
to represent
citizens, so-
Say,
the buildings
right.
So you had a
or
good,
residences. rather.
yeah, you had a good cross-section of
Nice.
folks.
And we had a really great discussion.
Yep.
They had
Um,
great ideas.
You did an election emergency plan.
Draft, yep.
draft, right? I believe where we do our elections is also our emergency management center if there was an emergency in town. Does it include what we would do for elections if somehow there was an emergency that police and fire had to abscond with that room?
It's a good question.
Because that wouldn't necessarily be like an emergency related to elections. It's the space you're in needs to be.
Right. I don't remember. Let me check.
And have we ever talked about doing elections somewhere else besides a basement building, basement room that looks ugly?
That came up in this discussion about how a lot of people use schools
Right.
and potentially approaching the schools to have a conversation about either a backup space. And then maybe you have that as a further conversation down the line.
I'd love to figure out a way to use like Memorial Hall in 1870 where you have,
Mm,
you know, the people who sacrificed their lives for the town
Mhm.
memorialized around the room when you're casting your ballot and, you know, keeping our democracy strong.
1870 is currently the backup site.
Yeah.
But as a primary site, parking would be
Yeah,
the,
it's
Parking would be a
parking
nightmare and access is a
well,
nightmare.
until you at least have some better stairs.
Mhm.
So I totally get why it's not there now, but to always keep it sort of in the back of brains of like, that would be just,
That would be kind of cool, just to
would
go
be.
there,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really wish we could easily solve that parking issue.
that was my list.
That's it? All right. Do you have any other updates?
No.
Okay, I only had 2. Last time when chiefs were here and they were talking about, the land behind the rescue building, thinking that DEB or somebody had like swooped in and said, no, you know, you can't build anything there. I reached out to Concom and they do not believe that it is wetlands back there, but it will take a proper test
Okay.
to do it, so, you know, keep that in mind. And then just wanted to make sure that everyone in town received, I don't know if the camera's picking up on this, the information on the Town of Berlin's Community Choice Power Supply Program. I had received a few emails, on this. The rate will be a wee bit higher, going up right now from 0.12167 to 0.13500, and Peg's not even gonna try to do Peg math
Right.
on that. Goes into effect, November 1st, I believe.
Yep.
And
November 1st for your December bill.
yep, and everyone is opted in. You have to call to opt out.
Unless you've already opted out previously.
Correct.
Correct.
So
You
if
are
you
not
already have a
re-opted
contract
in.
with another electric supply
Yep.
provider, this will not override that. But if you've not selected anybody, that probably means you're already in the plan.
Yep.
And it's good. And I believe Onid also told you what the current rate is for National Grid, which is substantially higher
Yes.
than that. So if people don't like the fact that it's going up by like
Mhm.
a penny, they could always go to National Grid and have it go up by 3 pennies. So.
Yes, National Grid currently is 0.165, so even Peg can do math on that, so. It's a little bit higher.
Yep.
Some of the areas on people's bills that I had them look at were they opted in, on like page 2. Had them look at their usage chart, because I know when the heat dome came through, we had every ceiling fan and air conditioner on, so our bill went, but his quickly going down without that. But just wanted to make sure that the folks knew this information is available at townofberlin.com. I think it's on one of the pages. They just
homepage.
need to find it, but that information is
Yep.
there on the homepage.
And this rate is locked in for 3 years.
That is
Correct.
correct.
Yep.
And so shout out to Kristen and the Energy
Energy.
Committee for doing all that work to do what is best for the
Yeah.
town.
It's 100% renewable.
Yes,
The
it is.
electricity
Yeah,
comes
that's
100%
huge.
renewable services. Yeah.
Cause I will let people know, and I had a gal come to the house who she must have somehow been watching like all the chatter about, oh my God, my electric bill has gone through the roof, and it's.
Yep.
Would you like solar installed on your roof?
Yeah, they're all. around.
So there's people starting to circulate
Are.
the town on that. But other than that, I am good. Kristen, did you have anything that you wanted to say on COA and rec director?
Oh, yes, thank you. I almost
Okay.
forgot my Post-it. So we had interviews today for the COA director, had actually 4 really great candidates. 2 who were exceptionally well qualified. The group had, primary interest in 1 candidate. And we'd like to have her come in on November 4th, introduce themselves, share kind of what their goals or visions are for the position and answer any questions that the select board may have. There was a general, pretty much the consensus from the group. There were, the other candidate was very strong as well, but we had, based on friendliness, personality, as well as experience, there was 1 candidate who really went over the top and above and beyond. And so I would like to bring that candidate forward. We also have rec director interviews tomorrow. So that will be forthcoming as well
Okay.
on the 4th. We have a
Awesome.
lot going on.
Okay. Coolness. All right. Well, with that, Mr. Hawkins, is there a motion that you'd like to make?
I think I'd do a motion to adjourn.
I think I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.